Hey everyone, I'm here because I really need to get this off my chest and maybe get some advice. I've never posted on Reddit before, but I've seen so many people share their stories here, and it feels like a safe space where I might find some support. So here it goes. Me, 35M, and my wife Emily, 33F, have been married for 7 years. We met in college and hit it off almost immediately. She was everything I ever wanted: smart, funny, and incredibly beautiful. We dated for a couple of years before I proposed, and I still remember the look on her face when she said yes. I thought we were going to spend the rest of our lives together, but now I'm not so sure. It all started a few months ago. I work in IT and I'm pretty tech savvy. Emily works in marketing and often has to entertain clients, go to dinners, and sometimes even travel for work. I always trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? We had a great relationship, or so I thought. One night, Emily came home late from a business trip. She seemed different, distant. I asked her about it, and she brushed it off as being tired from the trip. I didn't think much of it at the time, but then it started happening more often. She'd be gone for longer periods, and when she was home, she was always on her phone, texting, or on social media. I started to feel like I was living with a stranger. I guess that's when I started to get suspicious. One night, when she was in the shower, I decided to check her phone. I know it was wrong, and I feel guilty about it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She had a passcode on her phone, which wasn't unusual, but I had seen her enter it a few times, so I knew it. I unlocked her phone and went straight to her messages. Nothing. There was nothing there that seemed out of the ordinary. No suspicious texts, no unknown contacts. But then I remembered something from my job. I knew there were apps that could hide messages and photos behind seemingly innocent apps. So I dug a little deeper. That's when I found it. An app called Secure Vault. It looked like a generic calculator app, but when I opened it and entered a random sequence of numbers, it unlocked a hidden vault of messages, photos, and videos. My heart sank as I started going through them. There were hundreds of messages between Emily and someone named John. They were explicit, graphic even. I felt like I was going to be sick. There were photos of her in lingerie, videos of her doing things I never thought I'd see. But the worst part was that it wasn't just some random guy. John was one of her clients. I sat there in shock, not knowing what to do. My hands were shaking and my heart was racing. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. How could she do this to me? To us? I felt like my whole world was crashing down around me. When Emily came out of the shower, I couldn't even look at her. I put her phone back where I found it and went to bed pretending to be asleep. But I couldn't sleep. All I could think about were those messages, those photos. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. The next few days were a blur. I went to work, came home, and tried to act like everything was normal. But inside, I was falling apart. I didn't know how to confront her. I didn't know if I should confront her. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, but another part of me was scared of what I might hear. I decided to do some more digging. I wanted to know how long this had been going on, and if there was more to the story. So I started paying closer attention to her behavior. I noticed she was always getting these work calls in the middle of the night, and she would step outside to take them. She'd disappear for hours on the weekends, saying she was meeting up with friends or going to the gym. But now I knew better. One Saturday, I decided to follow her. She said she was going to a spa with some friends. I waited until she left and then followed her in my car. She didn't go to a spa. She drove to a hotel on the other side of town. I watched from a distance as she parked her car and walked inside. My heart was pounding in my chest as I waited, hoping I was wrong. After about an hour, I saw her come out of the hotel with John. They were holding hands, laughing, looking like a couple in love. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I took out my phone and snapped a few pictures, needing the proof for when I confronted her. That night, I couldn't hold it in any longer. When she came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table, the photos I had taken spread out in front of me. She looked at me, confused, then saw the photos. Her face went pale. "What's this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You tell me," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Who is John, and why were you at a hotel with him?" She sat down, burying her face in her hands. "It's not what you think," she said, but I could hear the fear in her voice. "Then what is it?" I demanded, "because it looks pretty clear to me. You're cheating on me with your client." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never meant for you to find out. I never meant for it to go this far." I felt a surge of anger. "You never meant for it to go this far? How long has this been going on, Emily? How long have you been lying to me?" She hesitated, then said, "A few months." A few months? I repeated, feeling sick. Why, Emily? Why did you do this? She wiped her eyes, taking a deep breath. I don't know, she said. I felt trapped. Our marriage, it wasn't what I wanted anymore. I needed something different, something exciting. Something exciting? I echoed, my voice rising. You destroyed our marriage for excitement? Do you have any idea what you've done? She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. I know I hurt you, she said quietly. I never wanted to hurt you. Well, you did, I snapped. You shattered everything we had. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of her betrayal hanging heavy in the air. I didn't know what to do, what to say. Part of me wanted to throw her out, to end it right then and there, but another part of me, the part that still loved her, wanted to understand, to find a way to fix this. I can't do this right now, I finally said, standing up. I need some time to think. She nodded, tears still streaming down her face. I understand, she said. I'll give you space. That night, I slept in the guest room. Or at least I tried to. I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. The images of her with John played over and over in my mind, tormenting me. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of betrayal and pain. In the days that followed, we barely spoke. I could see the guilt and regret in her eyes, but it didn't make me feel any better. I couldn't just forget what she had done. I needed to figure out what I wanted, what was best for me. I started seeing a therapist, hoping to make sense of my emotions and decide on a way forward. Talking to someone helped, but it didn't change the fact that my wife had betrayed me in the worst possible way. Every time I looked at her, I saw the woman I loved and the woman who had shattered my heart. I don't know what the future holds for us. I don't know if I can ever forgive her or if I even want to try. All I know is that I need time to heal, to process everything that's happened. Maybe one day I'll find a way to move on, with or without her. But for now, I'm just trying to survive, one day at a time. Thanks for listening. If anyone has any advice or has been through something similar, I'd really appreciate hearing from you. I feel so lost right now and could use all the support I can get. Hey everyone, I appreciate all the support and advice from my last post. I'm back because things have gotten even more complicated and I don't know what to do next. I thought catching my wife cheating would be the end of it, but it seems like it's only the beginning of a much darker, more twisted story. After that night when I confronted Emily, I took some time off work. I needed to clear my head and figure out what I was going to do. Emily moved into the guest room and we've been living like strangers under the same roof. It's been hell. Every time I see her, I'm reminded of what she did, but part of me still loves her. I know it sounds pathetic, but it's hard to turn off your feelings just like that. I spent a lot of time online reading stories of others who've been through similar situations. It was somewhat comforting to know I wasn't alone, but it didn't make the pain any less real. Some people said I should kick her out immediately, others suggested therapy. I was torn between wanting to fix things and wanting to walk away forever. One evening, while I was browsing through some forums, I came across a post about hiring a private investigator. At first, I dismissed the idea. What more could I possibly uncover? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed answers. I needed to know the full extent of Emily's betrayal. I found a local PI, a guy named Sam who came highly recommended. I contacted him and set up a meeting. When we met, I laid everything out for him, from the texts and photos I found to the hotel encounter. Sam listened carefully, jotting down notes. He asked me if I had any reason to believe Emily was hiding anything else, and I told him about her secret app and her sudden, frequent trips. Sam agreed to take the case and assured me he would be discreet. He started by tracking Emily's movements, following her whenever she left the house. It didn't take long for him to uncover more shocking details. Emily wasn't just meeting John at hotels. She had a whole secret life. Sam provided me with photos and videos of her going to high-end clubs and private parties, always with different men. It was clear that John wasn't the only one. There were at least 3 other men she was seeing regularly, and it wasn't just casual flings. There were expensive gifts, lavish dinners, and trips to exclusive resorts. One video showed her at a club, dancing provocatively with a man who looked like he was in his 50s. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, and she looked completely different from the woman I thought I knew. It was like she was leading a double life, and I had only seen the surface. The more Sam uncovered, the more I realized how deep this went. Emily was living a life of luxury and indulgence, funded by these men. She had a separate bank account, which explained the expensive clothes and accessories I often saw but never questioned. She had even rented an apartment in the city, which she used as her base for these escapades. I felt like my entire marriage had been a lie. I couldn't believe that the woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, could deceive me on such a massive scale. It was like something out of a movie, and I was living it. Confronting Emily again was out of the question. I needed more time to process everything and decide my next move. I continued to see my therapist, who helped me manage my emotions and think more clearly. But even with professional help, I was struggling. One night, after another sleepless attempt at finding some clarity, I decided to dig even deeper. I hacked into her email account, a skill I'd picked up working in IT. What I found there shook me to my core. Emily had a string of emails with John, and it was clear from their tone that he was more than just a client. They had been planning trips together, discussing gifts, and even talking about a future together. But there was something more sinister. John wasn't just a client. He was a high-profile businessman with a shady past. There were mentions of money laundering, offshore accounts, and other illegal activities. Emily was not just cheating. She was involved in something much bigger and much more dangerous. One email chain caught my attention. It was between Emily and another man, someone I hadn't heard of before. They were discussing a job that needed to be done, and it involved a significant amount of money. The details were vague, but the implications were clear. Emily was entangled in criminal activities. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to go to the police, but I was afraid of what might happen. What if Emily got arrested? What if I got dragged into it? I was terrified and completely out of my depth. I decided to call Sam and update him on what I had found. He came over the next day, and we pored over the emails together. He agreed that this was serious and suggested that I gather as much evidence as possible before making any decisions. He also warned me to be careful and not let Emily know what I was doing. Days turned into weeks as I continued to live in this nightmare. Emily seemed oblivious to my investigation, continuing her double life without any suspicion. I felt like I was losing my mind, but I needed to keep going. I needed to protect myself and find a way out of this mess. One afternoon, while Emily was out, I decided to check her secret bank account. I had found the login details in one of her emails. What I saw there was mind-blowing. There were transactions totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars. Money was being transferred in and out regularly, and there were payments to various luxury brands and high-end services. There was also a recurring payment to someone named Carter. I had no idea who this was, but the amounts were significant. I noted down the details and decided to ask Sam if he could find out more about this person. Sam did some digging and came back with more unsettling news. Carter was a known associate of John, involved in numerous illegal activities. It seemed that Emily was not just having affairs, she was deeply involved in criminal operations. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every day, I discovered something new that made me question everything I knew about my wife. I started to wonder if our entire marriage had been a sham from the beginning. Had she ever loved me, or was I just a convenient cover for her double life? I knew I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. I needed to make a decision, and I needed help. I decided to confide in my best friend Mike. We've known each other since college, and I knew I could trust him. One evening, I asked him to come over, and we sat down with a couple of beers while I laid everything out for him. Mike was shocked, to say the least. He listened patiently as I told him about the affairs, the secret life, the criminal activities. When I was done, he sat back and took a deep breath. "Dude, this is insane," he said. "You can't keep living like this. You need to get out, and you need to go to the police." "I know," I replied. "But I'm scared, Mike. What if they think I'm involved? What if she gets arrested and drags me down with her?" "We'll figure it out," he said, putting a hand on my shoulder. "But you can't do this alone. I'll help you. We'll go to the police together if we have to. But first, we need to make sure you have everything you need to protect yourself." Mike's support gave me the strength I needed. We spent the next few days gathering all the evidence, emails, photos, bank statements, everything. We organized it all into a file and backed it up in multiple places. I felt a little more secure knowing I had everything documented. I also decided to get a lawyer. I needed to know my rights and how to protect myself in case things went south. The lawyer advised me to proceed with caution and to make sure I had all my ducks in a row before making any moves. He also suggested that I start the divorce process quietly, without alerting Emily. So that's where I am now, sitting in my living room with a mountain of evidence and a broken heart. I'm trying to hold it together, trying to figure out the best way to move forward. I never thought my life would come to this. I never thought the woman I loved could betray me so deeply. But here we are. If anyone out there has been through something similar, I could really use some advice. How do you move on from something like this? How do you rebuild your life when everything you thought you knew has been shattered? Thanks for listening. I'll keep you all updated as things progress. For now, I'm just trying to survive one day at a time. Thanks for all the support and advice from my last posts. Things have gotten even more complicated, and I'm at my wit's end. I feel like I'm living in a nightmare, and I don't know how much more I can take. After gathering all the evidence with the help of Sam, the private investigator, and confiding in my best friend Mike, I decided it was time to take the next step. I contacted a lawyer and began the process of quietly filing for divorce. My lawyer, a tough but empathetic woman named Karen, advised me to keep everything under wraps until we had all our legal ducks in a row. She assured me that we needed to protect my assets and ensure Emily couldn't use her illicit activities against me. In the meantime, I continued to live under the same roof as Emily, pretending that everything was normal. It was excruciating. Every time I looked at her, I felt a mixture of anger, betrayal, and a lingering love that made everything so much harder. How could she do this to me? To us? One night I overheard Emily on the phone. She was speaking in hushed tones, and I could only catch bits and pieces of the conversation. It sounded like she was planning another business trip with John. My blood boiled. I wanted to storm in and confront her, but I knew I had to play it cool until the divorce papers were ready. A few days later, Sam called with more bad news. He had uncovered even more evidence of Emily's involvement in criminal activities. It turned out that John and his associate, Carter, were part of a larger criminal organization involved in money laundering, fraud, and even trafficking. Emily wasn't just a participant. She was actively helping them with their schemes. Sam had managed to hack into her secret bank account and found transactions that linked her directly to these illegal activities. I felt sick to my stomach. The woman I loved, the woman I married, was not only cheating on me, but was also a criminal. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed all the signs? With Sam's help, I gathered all the new evidence and handed it over to Karen. She was shocked by the extent of Emily's deceit and assured me that we needed to act quickly. We finalized the divorce papers and prepared to serve them to Emily, but we needed to ensure she wouldn't retaliate. Karen suggested we go to the police with the evidence. She believed that if we could show them Emily's involvement in the criminal activities, they would take action and protect me from any potential backlash. It was a risky move, but I knew it was the right thing to do. Mike and I went to the police station with Sam and Karen. We handed over all the evidence we had collected and explained the situation. The police officers were initially skeptical, but as they reviewed the documents, their expressions changed. They took the case seriously and assured us they would investigate further. A few days later, the police called me in for a meeting. They had reviewed the evidence and confirmed that Emily was indeed involved in serious criminal activities. They were planning a sting operation to catch John, Carter, and the rest of their organization. They needed my help to make it happen. I was terrified. The thought of being involved in a police operation scared the hell out of me, but I knew I had to do it. This was my chance to finally end this nightmare and get my life back. The plan was simple but risky. The police would wire me up, and I would confront Emily with the divorce papers and the evidence of her crimes. They hoped that in her panic, she would lead them to John and Carter. I agreed, knowing that this was the only way to protect myself and put an end to Emily's double life. The night of the sting operation, I was a nervous wreck. I couldn't believe this was happening. I put on a brave face and tried to focus on the task at hand. The police wired me up and gave me a signal to start the confrontation. I walked into the house, my heart pounding in my chest. Emily was sitting in the living room, scrolling through her phone. I took a deep breath and approached her. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling. She looked up at me, surprised. "What is it, Dave? You look serious." I handed her the divorce papers. "I've filed for divorce," I said, "and I know everything." Her face went pale as she took the papers. "What do you mean, everything?" "I know about John. I know about Carter. I know about the money laundering, the fraud, all of it. I've given everything to the police, and they're going to take you down." Emily's eyes widened with fear. You did what?" Before she could react, the front door burst open and the police stormed in. They quickly apprehended Emily, who was too shocked to resist. They took her into custody, and I watched as the woman I thought I knew was led away in handcuffs. The sting operation was a success. Emily led the police to John and Carter, and they were all arrested. The criminal organization was dismantled, and justice was served. But even though the nightmare was over, I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. In the days that followed, I tried to come to terms with everything that had happened. I couldn't believe how much my life had changed in such a short time. I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that it was over, but sorrow for the love I had lost and the betrayal I had endured. I continued to see my therapist, who helped me work through my emotions and start the healing process. I leaned on Mike and my family for support, grateful for their unwavering presence in my life. Slowly, I began to rebuild. One day, as I was going through some old photos, I found a picture of Emily and me on our wedding day. We looked so happy, so in love. It was hard to reconcile that image with the reality of who she had become, but I knew I couldn't dwell on the past. I had to look forward and focus on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into work, taking on new projects and challenges to keep my mind occupied. I reconnected with old friends and started going out more, trying to find a sense of normalcy. It wasn't easy, but each day felt a little better than the last. The media got wind of the story, and for a while I was bombarded with requests for interviews and comments. I declined them all, wanting to keep my life as private as possible. The last thing I needed was more attention on this painful chapter of my life. Months passed, and slowly but surely, I started to feel like myself again. The pain of Emily's betrayal was still there, but it wasn't as sharp. I was learning to live with it, to accept that sometimes people aren't who you think they are. One evening, as I was sitting on my back porch, enjoying a quiet moment, my phone buzzed with a message from Mike. "Hey man, just checking in. How are you holding up?" I smiled, feeling grateful for his friendship. I replied, "I'm doing okay. One day at a time, right?" "Absolutely," he texted back. "Let me know if you want to grab a beer sometime." "Will do," I replied. As I put my phone down, I realized that despite everything, I was going to be okay. I had survived the worst betrayal imaginable and come out the other side. It wasn't easy, and I still had a long way to go, but I was ready to start the next chapter of my life. Thanks for listening, everyone. Your support has meant the world to me. If you're going through something similar, just know that you're not alone, and you can get through it. Take it one day at a time, and lean on the people who care about you. You'll find your way. I'll keep you all updated as I continue to rebuild my life. For now, I'm just focusing on finding peace and happiness again. Hey everyone, I'm back again. It's been a whirlwind since my last update, and I feel like I owe it to you all to share what's been going on. Your support has been a lifeline, and honestly, writing these updates helps me process everything. So, after the sting operation, life started to settle into a new kind of normal. Emily was in jail awaiting trial, and I was trying to piece together my life. The police kept me updated on the case, and it seemed like they had a strong case against her, John, Carter, and the rest of their criminal organization. It was a relief to know that justice was being served, but it didn't erase the pain of her betrayal. I tried to throw myself into work and reconnect with friends and family. Mike was a constant presence, always checking in and making sure I wasn't drowning in my own thoughts. We went out for beers a few times, and it helped, but there was always a part of me that was haunted by everything that had happened. One day, as I was going through some old boxes in the attic, I stumbled upon a journal. It was Emily's. I know it's wrong to read someone else's private thoughts, but my curiosity got the better of me. I needed to understand how she could have led such a double life. Flipping through the pages, I saw the gradual shift in her entries. At the beginning, it was filled with notes about our life together, plans for the future, little love notes to me. But then, about a year and a half ago, the tone changed. She wrote about feeling trapped and bored, about needing excitement. There were entries about meeting John and how he made her feel alive. As I read, my heart ached. She had been unhappy for a long time, and I hadn't seen it. Or maybe I hadn't wanted to see it. Reading her journal didn't excuse what she did, but it gave me some insight into her mindset. She felt trapped in a life that wasn't what she had envisioned, and instead of talking to me, she sought escape in the worst possible ways. It made me question everything about our relationship. How had I missed the signs? Could I have done something differently? I shared the journal with my therapist, who helped me work through the guilt and sadness. She reminded me that while understanding Emily's perspective was important, it didn't excuse her actions. People make choices, and Emily had chosen deceit and betrayal over honesty and communication. One evening, I got a call from Sam. He had more information about Emily's activities, things the police had uncovered during their investigation. It seemed like every time I thought I had a handle on the situation, there was another layer to peel back. "Dave, you need to sit down for this," Sam said. His tone was serious, and I could tell this wasn't going to be good news. Okay, hit me, I replied, bracing myself. Emily was more involved than we initially thought. She wasn't just a participant, she was a key player in their operations. She handled the finances, coordinated meetings, and even recruited new members. The police found evidence that she was planning to expand their operations even further. I felt like the ground was falling out from under me. My wife, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was a criminal mastermind. How had I missed this? How had I been so blind? Thanks, Sam. I don't know what to say, I finally managed to get out. I know this is hard, Dave, but you did the right thing by going to the police. They're going to make sure she pays for what she's done. After I hung up, I sat in silence, trying to process everything. Emily wasn't just cheating on me, she was a criminal mastermind. It was like living in a bad movie. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. How had my life turned into this? I decided to take a leave of absence from work. I needed time to sort through my feelings and figure out what I wanted to do next. I spent a lot of time at the beach, walking along the shore and trying to clear my head. The sound of the waves was soothing, and it gave me space to think. One day, while I was at the beach, I ran into an old friend from college, Sarah. We hadn't seen each other in years, but we quickly fell back into an easy conversation. It was a welcome distraction from everything going on in my life. We started meeting up regularly, just as friends. Sarah was a great listener, and she helped me see things from a different perspective. She had been through her own share of tough times and understood what it was like to rebuild your life from scratch. One evening, as we were sitting on the beach watching the sunset, she turned to me and said, "Dave, you're stronger than you think. You've been through hell and back, and you're still standing. Don't let this define you." Her words struck a chord with me. I'd been so focused on the pain and betrayal that I hadn't taken a step back to see how far I'd come. I was still here, still fighting, and I wasn't going to let Emily's actions define my life. As the weeks passed, I started to feel a sense of clarity. I knew I needed to move forward, to build a new life for myself. I sold the house we had shared and moved into a smaller place closer to the beach. It was a fresh start, and it felt good to leave behind the memories that haunted me. Emily's trial date was approaching, and I knew I would have to testify. It was something I dreaded, but I knew it was necessary. I prepared myself as best as I could, leaning on my therapist and friends for support. The day of the trial arrived, and I walked into the courtroom feeling a mix of nerves and determination. Emily was there, looking small and defeated. It was hard to reconcile this image with the woman who had led a double life and masterminded criminal activities. When it was my turn to testify, I took a deep breath and told the truth. I spoke about our marriage, the betrayal, and everything I had discovered. It was painful, but also cathartic. I was finally able to release some of the weight I had been carrying. After my testimony, I sat in the courtroom and listened to the other witnesses. The evidence was overwhelming, and it was clear that Emily and her associates were guilty. When the verdict was read, I felt a sense of closure. Justice had been served, and now it was time to move on. The months following the trial were a time of rebuilding and healing. I focused on my own well-being, reconnecting with old hobbies and exploring new interests. Sarah remained a constant support, and we grew closer. Eventually, our friendship blossomed into something more. It wasn't easy to trust again, but Sarah was patient and understanding. She had her own scars, and together we learned to navigate the complexities of a new relationship. It was a slow process, but it felt right. One evening, as we sat on the beach watching the sunset, I realized how far I had come. The pain of Emily's betrayal was still there, but it no longer defined me. I had found a new sense of purpose and happiness, and I was ready to embrace the future. "Dave, are you okay?" Sarah asked, noticing my contemplative expression. I smiled and took her hand. "Yeah, I am. For the first time in a long time, I really am." We sat there in comfortable silence, the waves crashing softly against the shore. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I also knew I had the strength to face them. Life had thrown me a curveball, but I had come out the other side stronger and more resilient. To everyone who has followed my story, thank you for your support. It hasn't been an easy journey, but your encouragement has meant the world to me. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that we're capable of more than we think. No matter how dark things seem, there's always a way forward. One day at a time, we can rebuild and find happiness again.